What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? Happy Sunday night football. Dak Prescott and Ceedee Lamb put a little scare into the 49ers. Kept us on our toes here, us 49er people. Felt like a blowout, but the 49ers hold on. Win 30-24. Go to 4-4 into the bye. Meanwhile, the Cowboys, after a very, very bizarre couple weeks, now fall to 3-4 and look pretty bad. Now, maybe they'll get some guys back here coming soon, but yeah, what a Sunday night game. Got to hit on some other stuff around the NFL as well. Me and Colin we recorded a podcast, talked some of that game and a bunch of other stuff as well, so you can go check that out. I did want to hit a little bit on Jayden Daniels, and then we do sometimes on Sunday night a little overrated, underrated from today around the National Football League, and then a couple things from yesterday in college, because I didn't really do anything on Saturday besides watch a lot of college football, so I wanted to hit on a couple things that stood out to me. But before we dive into some football, I knew a lot of people at the game tonight at Levi Stadium. And I know a lot of people that love going to these big games. And I know a lot of people listening, depending on where you live, if your football team lives there, if you like traveling to a game. I saw in the Raiders game, the Raiders hosted the Chiefs, and when they sang the national anthem, the Chiefs fans always say home of the Chiefs, and it was basically a Chiefs home game. So if you ever want to travel to Vegas to see your squad, if they're playing the Raiders, or LA, same thing, I got you covered, because my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast, they're the best. Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Well, it was 27-10, and it felt like the 49ers were basically strangling them out. It's one of those where, as you head to the fourth quarter, you're kind of screwing around on your phone, bullshitting with some people, texting about how, the next, after the bye week, what the Niner season's going to look like, how the Cowboys are just circling the drain, how mad Jerry's going to be. Then all of a sudden, man, it's the NFL. The 49ers take their foot off the pedal, give up an easy touchdown to Ceedee Lamb, go 3 and out, and then the Cowboys have like a 70-second drive, and we got ourselves a ball game. Now, ultimately, in my opinion, that game, like, Dak Prescott's been doing this a lot for a long part of his career. I'm a Dak Prescott fan, and I've come around on him over the years. I think he's good, and I used to push back, and it's like, listen, I acknowledge, like, I'd have no problem if you have a good team putting Dak Prescott in, you can win, and I've always said that he is good enough to get hot in the playoffs. But, like, I thought that was a little bit of a hollow comeback. Like, those were a lot of hollow yards. The right team won, and the right team went on a 24-0 run in the middle of the game. So, like, the 49ers have beat them 4 straight times. In those 4 games, 2 of those being playoff games, Dak Prescott has 8 interceptions. And tonight, the score is 10-6 at halftime. And the Cowboys had played well in the first half. They really had. Their defense had played well. Purdy was off. It was like, okay, coming off a bye, all the shit that's happened with Jerry and the radio hosts and the articles coming out, it's like, okay, they're throwing the kitchen sink at this game. The 49ers get the ball out of halftime, score a touchdown after a big Kittle, like, crossing route that he takes to, like, the 3 or 4 yard line, then Garendo scores. It's 13-10. It's like, okay, game on. Game on. Cowboys are playing well. Niners get their mojo back. And what does Dak do? Couple plays later, throws an interception to Lenore. Several plays later, the 49ers score, and it's 20-10. And this has happened now 4 straight times when they've played. And he had an interception early in the game as well. He just throws the worst picks against the 49ers. His first pick deep that Jair Brown picked wasn't even close to being completed. It was a horrendous throw. And for whatever reason, and listen, I think Dak now has 8 interceptions on the season. He had 9 all of last year. So clearly he's turning the ball over more. They can't run the ball. But specifically against the 49ers and that defense, they owned this guy. And his interception tonight, like, is a huge swing in the game. And if you want to like put some merit to the last, 6, 7 minute comeback, maybe they win the game. If he doesn't throw that second half interception that leads to 7, pretty big swing, especially when you only lose by 6. So, like, this is a game now. Kyle Shanahan versus Mike McCarthy. Coordinators have changed. Players have changed. People have been injured. Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers defense, owns Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott. Now, I would say this is the worst version of that team that they faced over the last 3+ years. But you could argue tonight is the worst version of the 49ers that they've seen. And heading in the fourth quarter, it was a 17-point game. It wasn't quite as bad as last year on Sunday Night Football, but it did have some similarities. And unlike last year, like, the first half was close. The Cowboys were freaking winning. So, like, overall, the 49ers have a lot of issues. And the end of that game was pretty embarrassing. For it even to be that close and the blown coverages, I'm all for an easy touchdown late in a game when you're up 3 scores. You're not playing the same level of defense. Even Collinsworth said that. But then to have the second touchdown with number 88, there are certain players on certain teams when you get in those positions that I don't know you kind of have to follow. And I would say Ceedee Lamb on this Cowboys team would fall under that umbrella. He's going to get a catch or two, even if you're, putting a bunch of guys and directing the coverage and attempting to bracket him or whatever. Like, that's what great players do. But the level in which he was wide open was pretty embarrassing. But throughout most of the game, they had covered well. So I don't know if they just kind of took their eye off the ball, if they thought they had won it. Don't totally blame them. I did as well. And if that had gone worst case scenario, that would have been the worst 49er loss of my lifetime, given what was at stake, given the lead they had. But it was a bottom line business. And it's about winning and losing. And the 49ers were able to pull it out. They go into a bye now. And that division's weird. It really is, because currently the Cardinals are in first place at 4-4. The Rams, who are 3-4, obviously you get Puka and Cooper Kupp back. Their offense looks completely different. I think they're going to be pretty good. And Seattle is seriously leaking oil, because Geno now has had multiple moments against really good teams where he looks like a guy like, we can't keep doing this. Like, what's the point of this hamster wheel? We appreciate you. You're one of the great bridge quarterbacks that I can ever remember. And I'm not talking about a bridge quarterback that then becomes a starter and becomes like a stud. I'm talking about a true bridge quarterback, which he is. He's been incredible. But no one's ever thought, like, this is the long-term answer, or we can make a playoff run. And it becomes more crystallized when you play the 49ers, when you play the Buffalo Bills, and you look like that. But to me, this is still, especially if Christian McCaffrey comes back, the 49ers division to lose. And there is no excuse for them not to win it, especially because this is not a division that takes 12 or 13 wins to win the division. I think at 10-7, you have a very, very good chance to be named the NFC West champion. Now, that would be a tough playoff road, given that, Detroit's probably a 2 or 3 loss team, so they'll be the 1 seed. You would think between the Eagles and Commanders, one of those 2 teams probably going to be the 2 seed. And Atlanta, we'll see. I mean, they are 5-3. I think they're a little fraudulent, but they're scrappy. They got a little momentum. Actually, not really. I mean, they beat Tampa, who's missing their 2 receivers, and they just got the shit kicked out of them, a week ago. So, because they had injuries. So I still believe that the 49ers will win this division, but there are moments like that in the fourth quarter where you're like, gosh, what is going on? And then when it comes to the Cowboys, like, I was wrong. I thought they would be a playoff team. And they're clearly not. I mean, you just watch them against the 49ers. Like, obviously, the 49ers have Nick Bosa and Trent Williams, but they got a lot of random players as well. Number 6, Mustafa, is a third day pick who is now starting for them and playing really, really well. Renardo Green, who was out there a lot at the corner, is their second round corner. Isaac Guerendo, the running back, is a fourth round pick this year. They draft well. And the Cowboys hit on high picks, but you're watching like, yeah, they got injuries, but like, where's your depth? Where are your other guys? How are you running out Ezekiel Elliott in this spot? And whenever I hear people that cover the Cowboys, they're like, they love his leadership. Well, there comes to a point like the supply demand chart. Like, for you to be a leader, you don't have to be as great as you were in the peak of your career, but you can't be this. And that's the easiest position to find. We should never have a huge problem at like guard and center. We should be able to find those players, and we should be able to find running backs. Like, there's no excuse to not find a running back who can just produce on game days. I'm not asking for Adrian Peterson or LaDainian Tomlinson or Christian McCaffrey, but you should be able to find Isaac Guerendo. Hell, the only reason Isaac Guerendo came into the game is because Jordan Mason, who a couple weeks ago led the league in rushing, has a messed up shoulder. Well, where'd the 49ers get him? He's an undrafted free agent. Listen, it is hard to find star tackles, sweet pass rushers. That's why Micah Parsons goes number 11. That's why Nick Bosa goes number 2. You want to get Trent Williams? You got to draft him in the first round. He went, I think, 4th overall. And the only reason the 49ers got him for a third-round pick because he refused to go anywhere else. He had to come to Kyle Shanahan. Look at the Cowboys. Guyton, the kid they got from Oklahoma. Like, you didn't find that guy in the 4th. You had to draft him in the 1st. And he's like a raw project. So I never don't defend teams like when your backup tackle's in, yeah, it's going to be a problem. And some backup tackles are clearly worse than others. But there aren't that many dudes that are 6'5", 320. But running backs come in all shapes and sizes. And if your second and third stringers can't be productive, then that's on you. And this gets back to Jerry. And me and Colin just talked about this. It's like, who's he listening to? And here's the hard part about his role. Is he's the boss, he signs the checks, right? It's his team. But he's adamant that I have to be the GM, but he's not like watching any tape. It's not like Jerry is spending Tuesday and Wednesday breaking down Colorado, Cincinnati college tape. Let me look at Missouri, Alabama. Well, that's like what Adam Peters or Howie Roseman or John Lynch and those guys spend time watching that during the season. Yet when we get to draft time, he gets informed, they talk to him, they tell him all about it. He's the guy giving the thumbs up or thumbs down on the pick. And that's where you get all out of whack, is because your general manager, like, it can't be a, I just want the title because I want to talk about this stuff. Because there's a reasons why there's so much infighting on teams where the owner is just the owner, but he has his front office, his coach, and his president. Because you know why? No one cares that much the stuff the president's doing, even though he's making the team a lot of money, selling the naming rights, selling PSLs, doing all the business stuff for the team. That's why they always try to keep their, kind of fingers in the cookie jar of, well, I want to mess with football. I want to be involved in these meetings because that's the cool part about this whole thing. So Jerry, who's making just piles of money. For those of you kids that missed this, when I was a kid, they had Donald Duck, and he used to jump into the coins and just money. And that's what Jerry's like. I can't even imagine when he types into his Chase Bank or Wells Fargo or wherever he banks, whatever his accounts say. Even Jerry 30, 20 years ago couldn't have dreamed of the money he's making. And I always understand guys that struggle giving up parts of their business that they feel like the only reason we have this team is because I have the cojones. I put my nuts on the table to leverage our entire family. We didn't have the money to buy this. So you think I'm going to give up now? Even though it's like, well, yeah, Dad, shouldn't you just take a step back? Like, you're 83. Just relax. You can still come to the games, but do you need to be this involved? The 49ers have a bunch of success. Their owner, I mean, his parents technically own the team, but he runs it. And Jed York is like in his mid to late 40s, has nothing to do with any of this stuff. Whoever he hires, back to Trent Baalke and Jim Harbaugh, through John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, they do it all. Whether it's a first round pick, whether it's a trade for Trent Williams, whether it's a waiver wire, what, regardless, why would you want to be involved in something you know nothing about? Or Jerry, while he played college football, is not like breaking down the tape on this. Jerry probably is comfortable talking about, after the game, the team he just played. Do you think Jerry could break down the strengths and weaknesses of the 49ers players on Wednesday or Thursday like Mike and the coaching staff could? No chance. Especially uncommon opponents. Maybe the 49ers because they played them a bunch, but let's just pick a random team like the Cincinnati Bengals or just whoever an uncommon opponent is. He'd have no shot. There is not a general manager in the NFL who wouldn't have a pretty strong opinion, definitely on like the two deep on every player, their strengths and weaknesses, and then any young player on the roster who had been drafted who's a practice squatter or like a third stringer. Why? Because they've evaluated, they've written up, they talked about it. That's their life. So you get in these positions and you're competing against the 49ers or the Eagles or now Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. Like, it's going to be hard. Because I don't think Mike sucks. Clearly, he's probably not what you'd want in a superstar coach, but he's proven to be pretty good over the course of now almost 20 plus years. But if his general manager sucks or doesn't listen to him or they have no cohesion, you got no shot long term. And finally, it bubbled over. And listen, I'm not excusing what happened last year against Green Bay, even though when you watch Green Bay play and you watch Dallas, now in that game and over the course, like, of course, Green Bay's better. They're way more explosive on offense. Their quarterback's just way more talented. Their coach is probably better, right? If you had to choose a coach right now, you would definitely take LaFleur over McCarthy. But one huge advantage they have is the front office because they've had a consistent group going back to Ron Wolf. All the guys they hired are carryovers or crossovers of guys that were already on the staff. They have an organizational philosophy. And Gutekunst to Ted Thompson to Ron Wolf, these fuckers know what they're doing. And it's crazy to say. And two, like, listen, at 83 years old, I've never been 83, but I've been around a few of them. You're just not quite as cognitively quick. You're not going to be as sharp. Even if 20 years ago you were sharp as a tack and you're the smartest guy in the room. I'm not even saying Jerry is. I don't know the guy personally, but I'm just even giving him the benefit of the doubt. I stumbled upon on Saturday night after the Colorado game ended, Maria was working late and she like hopped in the shower and it's probably like 11 o'clock at night. And I popped a melatonin, but there wasn't really anything on TV. So I was just playing on my phone and somehow on my phone, the football life of Al Davis came up. And you're watching, you're going, like, the guy I kind of grew up on was the senile, old, like, had lost his fastball. But you watch these clips of Al in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, you're like, this guy was like the Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos of football. This guy was with a little Donald Trump to him. This guy was a fucking renegade, crazy dude who was football smart as it didn't get any better. Obviously, at the end, he lost it. Because as you age, a couple things. You're not quite as quick. And two, you get way more stubborn. And I would say most successful people have a stubborn nature because if they didn't have that, they probably never would have got there. You see it with great coaches. Kyle Shanahan can be stubborn. Andy Reid can be stubborn, right? I'm sure Pat Riley in his heyday had some stubborn moments. It comes with the territory. But when you lose it up top a little bit, it's just, and I'm not blaming like Jerry Jones for that individual game, but you've seen this kind of just fall apart. I mean, the 49ers could have fallen apart too over the last 3 or 4 weeks. It just felt like it doesn't get any worse. But it's not like their owner is on the phone with the radio and like saying crazy stuff, and then these articles are coming out that easily could have come out a couple years ago, but they're not going to come out when you're winning because no one would care, and it just snowballs. And then the pressure gets put on their quarterback, and it's the same thing with Purdy. If it ever got put on Purdy over the next 10 years, like our team kind of sucks, our organization's in shambles, carry us to 10 wins, he's not going to be able to do it. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. But if you have like a stable environment with people that know what they're doing, like Jared Goff is probably the front runner for MVP, him and Lamar, right? But no one would compare Jared Goff's skill set to Lamar, right? And every single human, if you could choose one, you would take Lamar Jackson over Jared Goff. Because this version of Lamar, who is by far the best version that we've ever seen out of him, you feel like could play anywhere. You put him on Carolina, they'd get like 5 or 6 wins. Jared definitely needs help around him. Most of us do. Most human beings aren't like, I don't know, Elon Musk or Peyton Manning. Most of us are going to be very dependent on other people. Even the most successful, famous, you name it. You go industry to industry. Most people are going to be predicated on others. And look at Jared Goff. You get him well-run organization, offensive pieces everywhere, good offensive coordinator. Their defense still a little shaky, but definitely playing pretty well given that their best defensive players. Looks like John Gruden, I heard, tell part of my take guys, he reminded him of Joe Montana, which is kind of crazy because Joe could always run, but I know what he means. Efficiency. Can you imagine if 4 years ago I'd say, hey, well, one, John Gruden, who's coaching for the Raiders, making $100 million, he's going to get fired on like a Monday night from leaked emails. Then he's going to sue the league. And I saw Florio posted something like last week that he's kind of making some headway. Maybe he'll win. Who knows? So he's going to get fired, and he's going to be shunned from the league. And then a couple years later, he's going to start this YouTube channel. It's actually pretty entertaining. It's going to be just him. It's going to feel like Monday Night Football. And he's going to give a bunch of takes. And one of his takes is going to be Jared Goff, and he's not just making this up. He's going to compare him to Joe Montana and have a very good chance to win the MVP. You would have been like, what world? Did the world end? You wouldn't even believe it. But what? The Lions are no longer and on the Lions. He's going to be on the Lions. He'd be like, put down the crack pipe, homie. Well, it turns out the Lions are just well run. And they know what they're doing. And when a talented person is surrounded by other talented people and talented leadership, like the sky's the limit. And you see Dak, who, like, I'm not at this point in time some Dak hater, though the picks tonight were bad. But he got no chance with this current operation. Does your favorite NBA player have what it takes to be crowned king of the court? Find out at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. DraftKings is offering $1 million a day in bonus bets for the first 10 days of the NBA season. That's $10 million in bonus bets. Here's how to shoot your shot. Opt in and get a daily NBA profit boost token. Pick a pregame NBA player prop to boost. If that player leads the league that night in points, plus rebounds, plus assists, you win a share of $1 million in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings app and use code JOHN. That's code JOHN to win a share of $1 million in bonus bets if your player is king of the court. Only on DraftKings. Crown is yours. Before we get into overrated, underrated, Jayden Daniels, I don't even know what his box score was today, but I would say probably in the third quarter, I just felt like he was clearly the best player on the field. Him and Montez Sweat was pretty damn good as well. But I think there's a chance Jayden Daniels, so far through this season, has been one of the best players in the NFL. It is crazy how good the guy is. Because I was texting with someone, we'll get into Colorado, who's having an unreal season. Obviously, Shedeur is going to be in the mix to be the number 1 overall pick. But like when you talk to scouts about Shedeur, it's like, well, he's a good athlete, not great like his dad. He's got a good arm, but not a howitzer. Then you're watching Jayden, you're like, well, he's kind of like Lamar 2.0 running around. His arm, I don't know if it's Brett Favre, but it's pretty damn good. If Brett was like a 10 or John Elway was a Marino 10 and a Dak is like a 5 or 6, I mean, what's Jayden? Like an 8.5, 9? I mean, he is throwing seeds. Even the Hail Mary. How far did that fly in the air? I knew he threw a good deep ball because you watch him last year with the 2 wide receivers. I mean, his go route was elite. But to me, what I didn't know is the strikes over the middle of the field. It looks like you're watching like Josh Allen or Justin Herbert. It's like, oof. You're like, holy shit. I mean, this guy, like, clearly they have a good coach. Like Dan Quinn maybe needed to get fired from Atlanta, take a step back. Sometimes you need a reset. Serves us all well sometimes. And I would imagine he's come back even a better version. So, like, he has a very, very capable head coach. His general manager worked for Belichick in the 2000s, John Elway during the Peyton Manning era, and the first 7 years of Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. So he's got a pretty good idea what works in the NFL personnel-wise. So he has a capable head coach, clearly, and a GM. While he's never been a GM before, it's impossible to have a better resume as a guy who's never been a GM. I mean, countless Super Bowl wins and Super Bowl appearances with Pro Bowlers and Hall of Famers at basically every position. So he's got a good spot to go to, even though I don't think they're that talented. But to me, he feels like one of those guys I talked about that, like, might be the rare guy that would have transcended wherever he went. Like, if you would put this guy in Carolina, Carolina wouldn't be a playoff team, but they would look a lot fucking better than they look. Because this guy's talent is eye-popping. Like, you watch Caleb, very talented guy. He's got a big arm. He can scramble around. But, like, if you told me today, who would you take? If you could have one guy for your team, who would you want? It would take me less than a millisecond to respond Jayden Daniels. Now, your career's not written after whatever. You know, it's October 27th, year 1. But I don't think this year, just from a perception, just the overall standpoint, where it's like, I just don't think this guy could be that much better. It's pretty crazy. I don't know what his overall numbers will look like. The other thing this week, what he proved, and Caleb has proved this too, because he's just getting peppered nonstop because his offensive line sucks. It's like he had an injury where his game ended and he had to put on the sweats. And the next week, it was like most people thought, and maybe they knew the whole time he was going to play. And I haven't, just because so much stuff, me and Colin went right after, I haven't seen all the quotes. But it was like, clearly this guy's a tough dude. So it's like, wait, he can run really fast, and he's a very instinctive runner. Needs to work a little bit on avoiding some hits, but hopefully that can be taught and hammered home. His deep ball is elite. His arm strength is awesome. His accuracy has been like league leader, and all the intangibles are all like a plus. Like, is this guy, I don't know, the modern day perfect player? So we'll get into the Hail Mary, but I've been wowed. Not that I was a hater, but I was like, look at his team at LSU. He has 2 NFL tackles who are not really playing that well in college right now. His 2 receivers last year, one guy was a 6th pick. The other guy feels like he scores every week for the Jags. His tight end was good. I mean, their team was just stacked. It's like, is it really going to be this easy? And I was like, he's going to go to a team that McLaurin's good, but they're going to rely on some guys you've never really heard of. Luke McCaffrey, running back solid. And Cliff Kingsbury, who's I've always been a little hesitant on his style of football. And you just watch him, you're like, God, they're sweet. And he is awesome. Can I tell you about my friends at True Classic? Fall's here, and it's time to step up your game. Right now, you can unlock big savings when you bundle packs. Just go to my exclusive link at trueclassic.com/John to save. That's trueclassic.com/JOHN. Shop now and elevate your wardrobe. Here's the thing. I wear the same couple t-shirts because I own a lot of them every day. I like to keep it simple. I don't want to think too much. I'm a podcaster. I don't need to dress up. True Classic sent me a bunch of t-shirts. You can see me rocking it right now. They fit great. I actually just ordered multiple 6-packs. A 6-pack of black t-shirts and a 6-pack of gray t-shirts. In these packs, if you don't want one color, you can mix and match. White, blue. I kind of have a darker green on right now. They fit great. I was asking Maria earlier. I'm like, how do I look? She's like, God, you look pretty good in that. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's why I ordered more. They also sent me a pair of joggers and a pair of boxer briefs. Shirts that design your best features with a perfect fit. They really do. Kind of make me look buff. They fit well around my midsection. Cannot recommend them enough. You can mix and match, like I said, and 100% perfect fit. Guarantee and easy returns. So the fall is here. Like I said, step up your game right now. You can unlock big savings when you bundle packs. Just go to my exclusive link at trueclassic.com/John to save. That's trueclassic.com/JOHN. Shop now and elevate your wardrobe today. Okay, let's fly through a little overrated, underrated to cap off this Sunday night. You know, in the business, it's probably like this in any industry, even though, in football specifically, because we have some, people, whether you're on NFL Network or, whether you are one of the main news breakers or you're just a big personality on like ESPN. When you know someone and like them, I understand supporting them and saying positive things. But the reaction to Mike McDaniel, which I get because I followed him in San Francisco, his quirkiness, his funniness, he used to look like this just gigantic nerd who's transformed into this guy who looks like he's slinging 8 balls behind a McDonald's down in Miami. But like part of the hype was once he got to Miami, he had these designer shades. He had on a $50,000 watch. He had on the joggers. He was just like Mr. Cool. He's calling all these plays. It's like, okay, I get it. And even last year, they scored 70 points in a game. Remarkable accomplishment. Okay, what's their record? Who are they beating? It's like, they're not really beating anyone good. And their team's pretty soft. And like most Southern Florida teams, they fall apart down the stretch. You're like, wait, so this guy's like Cliff Kingsbury with a better PR campaign? Well, yeah, but he's not really that good looking, and it's more that like people like to sarcastically make fun of him, but he's got some heavy hitters in the media that really, really act like he's a genius. And then I watch his team today. Obviously, Tua coming back is a gigantic upgrade over what they were playing with. And they looked like a normal NFL offense. Tua looked good, actually. Now, granted, Arizona's defense is terrible. But their defense and just their team is just so soft. And they're way worse this year than last year on defense. Why? Because they lost players. They lost Wilkins to the Raiders. They lost Van Ginkel to Flores. Like two of their better players, two of their best players on defense. They're just gone. And now their defense just blows. So to lose to Arizona, which is not an easy team, but that was a classic like Arizona deep flight. You were up at one point in time by like double digits. It should have been an easy win. And then you look up and Arizona's kicking a walk-off field goal. So I think Mike McDaniel, of all the offensive coaches, like LaFleur's 6-2. Kevin O'Connell's winning with Sam Darnold. Andy Reid and Mahomes are winning with, you can't even name half their receivers. And this guy just never even won a big game. He hasn't won a game in December against a real team in like 2 years. Never won a playoff game. Last year, thoroughly embarrassed in the playoffs after not winning the division. I think he's the most overrated coach in the league. Underrated. You could argue the most underrated thing in all of sports. The walk-off grand slam on Friday night, Freddie Freeman, and I hate the Dodgers. Not as much as the Lakers, but I'm definitely rooting for the Yankees. A walk-off grand slam in the World Series, like that's anyone that plays like Little League Baseball, you dream of doing that, like hitting off the tee. I say a Hail Mary. That thrill of watching it on the edge of your seat, because I don't have the percentages in front of me. 99 out of 100 don't work. 50 out of those 99s are kind of an embarrassing play. Probably less than 10% of them even get remotely close. When they hit, it is one of the coolest things in sports. And you could argue when they hit for the team that's at home, like Rodgers, if I remember that when they did that montage a couple weeks ago, when he hit the Bills, and they did the montage. Like the one he hit against Arizona in the playoffs was on the road in Arizona. I think two out of his three were on the road. So it's cool. It's got to be jarring for the fans. When you go bananas after he hit it, just that crowd, that franchise has been so shitty. I saw a funny meme on Instagram. It's like, can you imagine Dan Snyder? You own that team for decades and you leave and immediately they get the special juices of just like your stink being off them and they're hitting Hail Marys to go. It's a record now 6-2. Uh, what a cool moment. Seattle, they are a pretty overrated team. Their coaching staff's fantastic. I like Mike McDonald and I love Ryan Grubb. But every time you looked up Ryan Grubb, Gino was screwing up and it looked like he was, I don't know, just exhausted with it. And he last 2 years, he had Penix, he had Rome, he had McMillan, he had Polk. Their offense was unreal. Welcome to the NFL and welcome to a bridge quarterback who sneaky wanted a contract extension this offseason. Thank God John Schneider hung up the phone because Seattle, they're undoing, as you see in these big moments, is the quarterback. And at 3-0, and they were a sexy pick. Everyone's like, this could be a team. They went 9 wins the last 2 years. Sometimes we do that. Like, you guys do understand Pete Carroll's a Hall of Famer. So yeah, we can nitpick him. Everyone thinks he's a village idiot. They thought the same thing when they traded Russell. It's like, Pete, you just got to let Russ cook. And they traded him. And Denver let him cook. And he burned down the kitchen. I actually think it's aged pretty well on Pete Carroll these last couple years. Like, guys, he's not as bad as you think. Google the resume. As Kurt Signetti says in Indiana, Google me. Go to Google and type in Pete Carroll. Mike McDonald, I am not out on this coaching staff, but I am out on the team because of the quarterback. Jameis has to be one of the most underrated just players in sports right now. Now, one thing today shed a light on was truly how shitty Deshaun Watson was. Because I'd have moments where you'd just be watching a random Browns game and the score was usually like 7-6 in the third quarter. And you'd look at social media and all these stats are flying out about how statistically worst third down player of all time, his EPA, everything. It just didn't get any worse. And then you'd watch it every once in a while, like he'd hit a play. You're like, yeah, he's bad. And he ran into so many sacks. But it was like, I feel like I've seen worse. And then there were a moment, I'd say the last 2 weeks of his starts, you're like, yeah, this is pretty atrocious. Then you watch Jameis today, who is scrambling around because they've struggled to protect. They've had offensive line injuries throughout the year. Keeping plays alive with his feet behind the line of scrimmage and just heaving the ball down the field. And it was like, yeah, Deshaun never really did that. He refused to push the ball down the field. Now, they got lucky. Jameis, now granted, they still had all 3 timeouts. He should have thrown an interception to Kyle Hamilton. And Kyle Hamilton is, if I was a betting man, when his career is all said and done, I think he will be a Hall of Famer. He is one of the best defensive players in the NFL. He is a badass. He had as easy of an interception as he'll ever get, and he dropped it. And the very next play, Jameis throws the game-winning touchdown. And it was cool. After the game, he's quoting Eminem. It's just, he's a trip, man. And I also think this sheds light too now. Deshaun Watson has sank that franchise. Because last year, offense was horrendous. Hurts his shoulder, Flacco comes in, playoffs. This year, it's like, how can you keep starting him? Everyone's saying, well, the answer is simple. $230 million. Guaranteed. Then he gets injured. Jameis comes in. Even if they had lost today, they had not looked like that all this year with Deshaun Watson and all last year pre-Flacco with Deshaun Watson. That version of the Browns would not have one win sitting here before the Ravens game. I'm not saying they would have a winning record, but their season, if Jameis had just started all season long and just played like that, obviously he would have some bad games as well. They're a 3-win team. And that's where if you're a Browns fan, under no circumstances, no one cares about the contract. The money's been paid, Jimmy. That guy can never start for us again. Whether it's Flacco, whether it's Jameis, whether it's some fucking kid in college right now. That guy's never playing quarterback for us again. And if he does, if you're a Browns fan, you got to quit the team because that would be the biggest FU anyone's ever given to any fan base of all time. Like, we've given it 2 seasons, multiple times other quarterbacks come in and things change immediately. Overrated. Last year, the Raiders, they tend to have their Super Bowl randomly throughout a season when they win 5 or 6 games. They beat Patrick Mahomes, embarrassed them on Christmas. And as we went to the offseason, their coach, doing all these podcasts, said we have Mahomes rules and was like pumping his chest out. Then they played the Chiefs today and they lost. Honestly, pretty handily. Gardner Minshew threw a touchdown late in the game to make the score look a lot closer than it was. It was 27-13. But yeah, I'd probably keep my mouth shut about that guy if my team has had 2 winning seasons in the last 25 years. I do think one underrated part about the NFL, unlike college, because in college, like Ohio State, I'm sure is getting a lot of shit in Columbus, right? Alabama's people were, I guess they ended up winning decently in Missouri. But when you're a big time team and you barely beat a team that everyone thinks that you should beat by double digits, people are pissed. No one apologizes in the NFL. And the Chiefs today got thrown a bone because the Ravens lost another game. The Bills already have 2 losses, and the Chiefs have already beat the Ravens. They play the Bills in a couple weeks, but currently they have a 2-game lead on them. I think the Chiefs' next game is at Tampa, who's missing their 2 wide receivers. That's probably a W for the Chiefs. Winning ugly is a good thing. I mean, there is nothing like in the NFL showing up Monday morning after a win. So many teams, and this happens all the time, you play really well, and then you screw something up in the fourth quarter and you lose. Like, that sucks. And the Chiefs are now 7-0. And everyone's been nitpicking this team. Mahomes' stats, their offense, their passing game. It's like the dust is going to settle, and what's their record going to be? Like, to me, they're more likely to be. I mean, is this a 15-2 team? Like, they're not 12-5. I would say worst case scenario at this point in time, as long as Mahomes stays healthy, 13-4 feels like a pretty good stretch, or I mean, a pretty big stretch because you got 10 games left. So to get to 30, they're going to go 6-4. Like, if they go 6-4 now, they'd be 13-4. 7-3, like, are they going to lose 3 games? I don't know, man. Overrated. Quarterback health. Look at Matt LaFleur, who Jordan Love now, who has so many passes throughout a game that look exactly like Aaron Rodgers. You're like, what a dime. And obviously throws a bad pick as well. Threw a bad one today. But then Trevor Lawrence came right back, I think, the next play and threw an interception, which is classic Trevor Lawrence. But he gets injured. And it kind of looked like he tweaked his knee again. And then I didn't have the sound on because I had it on, I think, on the Eagle-Bengal game. And then I look up and Malik Willis in the game. So I immediately go to the X channel, as my mother calls it, and figure out that he's got it growing. And all of a sudden he's out and Malik Willis comes in and they just win the game. I mean, LaFleur is he's 6-2 now, and he has played a lot. It's not like, oh, he's only had to play like 20 snaps with Malik Willis. Like, no, he's had to start multiple games with the guy, and then he had to play another game where, I mean, hell, the game was tied when they got the ball back to lead him on a game-winning drive. So at this point in time, listen, I'm a huge Jordan Love guy, but shit, his health might be a little overrated for the Packers. It's kind of underrated how bad the Jags are. Even the day when they were kind of feisty and making some plays, Trevor Lawrence had an awful, awful fumble, an awful interception. Their defense just gives up these enormous plays in the biggest spots. I do believe Trevor Lawrence is, when you factor in his money and the hype and the draft pick, one of the most overrated players I've ever seen. Obviously, everyone's going to blame Doug, but like I don't know how much different this guy looks if you put him with LaFleur, Shanahan, or McVay. They stink. Obviously, the most overrated team in the history of sports. When you factor in the hype, when you factor in the money, when you factor in the trades, would be the New York Jets. To lose to Gerard Mayo and Jacoby Brissett because Drake May got a concussion. I told Colin this. I never thought that Jacoby Brissett would lead him on a game-winning drive. Once the Jets scored and then had a delay of game and then didn't even get close to converting the 2-point conversion. I mean, he got tackled like the 3-yard line. I still had full belief. Like, I doubt the Patriots even get past the 50-yard line. And you're watching different games. You look up, they busted a big play. All of a sudden, they hit a receiver. For them to have essentially a walk-off touchdown, I know Jets technically got the ball back, but man, I've been saying this forever. Football is not a game of mercenaries. It's not a game where you can just put guys together like a baseball team. Big names. If your coaches suck, and their coaches suck, you could argue if you had to rank coaching staffs, especially now that Robert Saleh has been removed, who immediately goes to the Packers. I mean, it's the bottom, might be the worst coaching staff in the league, especially when you factor the talent. Like, even if Bill Walsh was coaching the Carolina Panthers with Bryce Young and Andy Dalton, like, how many games were they actually winning? But this Jets team, can you imagine if, like, McVay, LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan was their coach? I wouldn't pick them to win the Super Bowl, but they would, I don't know, at worst be 4-3. Two, 2-6, 2-6. So 2-6 to get to 8 wins. To get to 8 wins, they would have to. So 2-6, they'd have to win six. They'd have to go 6-3 down the stretch. So a team that just went 2-6 would then have to go 6-3. I mean, this is best case scenario. 7 wins. Best case scenario, 7 wins. Honestly, it's got implosion written all over it. They are very, very close to being like a 4 or 5 win team. Um, Underrated. You got to give him credit because he makes his comment after the international game, and then Belichick comes out with a little, little shotgun blast from the side, takes a huge, huge shot at Mayo, and rightfully so. Gerard Mayo's going behind his back last year. I get it. Let's if you think someone's wronged you, screwed you, we all have our own individual experiences that are based on how we were treated by individual people. He feels like he helped put this guy on the map. He drafted him. He taught him the coaching world. And then this guy last year is meeting with Robert Kraft behind his back. It had to feel for Bill had to feel very slimy, even though Bill does slimy stuff too. But hey, we're all humans. And for Mayo to win this game had to feel pretty damn good. Now, the shitty part about winning this game, if you're Mayo, everyone's talking about the Jets, not necessarily you, but you don't care. A win's a win. A couple other quick college things. Uh, I do think the most overrated player I've seen this year, and I probably hyped him up as well. But the kid at Nebraska, Dylan Raiola, I think we need to pump the hype train on that guy because every time I watch him in a big spot, not only does he not come through, it can't look any worse. Now, I'm not blaming it all on him. I couldn't break down the strengths and weaknesses and how good his skill guys are, but he makes some horrendous plays in big spots. I mean, just some eye-opening loser plays. I don't mean he's like, I'm talking about football. I'm not talking about him as a person. I'm just saying, like, the plays he makes lead to losing in big ass spots. Turns the ball over, makes bad decisions. And if you're going to be named Baby Mahomes because you look like him, you move like him, I think we got to revoke that name if you don't even come close to playing like him on game day. Uh, I think this is the most underrated job in America, and people have been saying this forever. The Texas A&M is just a coach away. And I always thought, like, I get you got a lot of money, and I get you recruit well, but this program for most of my life has always kind of looked the same. Now, some years they've been worse than others, but they have never, ever been some powerhouse contender for multiple straight years. And then they get Elko from Duke, who had also coached there, who just has this gigantic beer belly. It looks like he weighs like, I don't know, 320 pounds. Love his look. Great dad bod. And he comes, and this guy is coaching his ass off. And what he did on Saturday night, and listen, I have no dog in this fight. I went to Cal Poly. So I'm not an SEC guy. I'm not a Big Ten guy. And I appreciate the history, the rivalries, the passion for all these people that went to those type schools. I'm jealous. It has to be really cool on Saturdays or the NCAA tournament to go. I went to Wisconsin. I went to Iowa. I went to Florida. Like, that's sweet. I'm very jealous of you. But I watched the Wisconsin game against Penn State, and I watched the Texas A&M game, and I've thought this for a while now. The difference of the night game crowds, just in terms of a viewer and the power of them, I feel like the SEC blows you guys out of the water. And clearly, you have. When I was at Fresno State, we played at Wisconsin. I'm not trying to diminish Wisconsin or Penn State whiteout or the Ohio State Michigan games. Obviously, they have incredible crowds. There ain't nothing like that. There's nothing like I saw a couple weeks ago LSU at night against Ole Miss, or Texas A&M at night against LSU, or even that night 3 or 4 weeks ago Bama when they hosted Georgia. I'm sorry y'all don't have that in the bag, as they would say down there. And what Mike Elko's doing, who are now in the fat, if Texas A&M beats South Carolina this week, they are a playoff team. They are a lock playoff team. And if they were to beat Texas the last game of the season, which is cool because that rivalry has been brought back from the dead because Texas joined the SEC, they would be in the SEC championship game. And who knows? I don't exactly know how the tiebreakers work, and who knows who could lose a game. They could even lose that game and still be in the SEC championship game. So what Mike Elko has done, those defensive linemen look like a bunch of dudes that easily could have started for the Cowboys tonight. So that was cool. And last but not least, I've watched a lot of Colorado over the last 3 or 4 weeks. They deserve, Dion deserves a lot of credit because after that Nebraska game, even after the first win against North Dakota State, I thought it was going to be very similar to last year. No running game. Defense sucks. Shador has to be superhuman. Travis Hunter has to make crazy plays just to win 5 games. Well, they're 6-2, and they have been beating the shit out of people. They went on the road to UCF, destroyed them. Went on the road to Arizona, destroyed them. Hosted Cincinnati, who was 5-2. We're up 2 touchdowns with 4 minutes to go. And they got Warren Sapp on the sideline with what looked like, a full tin of Copenhagen and half a pouch of Red Man in his mouth, coaching his ass off. The defense is flying around. Their offensive run game is way better than early in the season and obviously last year. The receivers are awesome. Travis Hunter's unreal. And they're just good. And they also easily could have beat Kansas State. Like, they are a couple plays away from being a team in position to be in the Big 12 championship game. And if you get into that game, if you win the game, you're in the playoffs. It's out of their control now. BYU, I don't think lost a game. They need someone to beat Kansas State. But hey, it's college football. Anything could happen. But if they get to 9-3, that I would have laughed in your face if you would have told me after week 2, like, Florida, some of these teams should be calling Dion. He gets a 9-3 with this squad. He's doing a hell of a job. He really is. And I would imagine if you live on the East Coast, that game's had to kick off like 8 o'clock at night. You probably didn't watch it. They just look like a buttoned up good team. Now, obviously, they got a couple high end NFL players, but just as a unit, their defense is way better. Their pass rush is way better. Their running game's way better. Like, I've come a long way. I thought it was a lot of fluff. Dion can coach, man. Thanks for listening, people. Adios. Have a good night.